All right, we can begin. Thank you very much, Rehaan, for joining us.
Thanks, Well, for having me on.
You're welcome. So for those of you that don't know, Rehaan is the chairman of the Urban Council in Weligama. This is the third interview that Ro is hosting as part of our COVID-19 and the Cities series, which will focus on either large cities or districts or even entire provinces as far as we can to assess the situation in each of these places with COVID-19, how they're managing, how they're dealing, what the issues are, what their unique challenges are. We find that a lot of the conversations are focused on Colombo and Colombo's issues, and we would like to democratize this space as much as possible and have people on who will be able to speak more to the districts and areas they're from. We started our session, of course, with Colombo, with Kishan Karunaratne, who is the Chief of Staff to the Colombo Mayor. We followed that up with an interview with Mr. Rasamanikam, Shanaki and Rasamanikam from Batiklu and the East. And now we have Rehaan Jayawickreme, who, as I mentioned, is the Urban Council Chairman for Weligama. Will speak to us not just about Weligama, but about the South in general and other issues relating to that area. Rehaan, I'm going to start with giving people an overview of the South. Of course, many people know this, but just to sort of put things in place before we speak. As we know, the Southern Province is 3 districts, Galle, Hambantota, Mathura. From what I know, there are 47 divisional secretariats, and the Weligama Urban Council is a small electorate within that area. But from your vantage point in the South, how can you describe how COVID-19 has affected the South and what the management has been thus far? First wave, second wave, third wave, in a nutshell.
Okay, so it basically hasn't been great at all. The vaccination program we started much when we were supposed to start. And one very important thing is, Joel, that when it comes to the South and when it comes to so many other places, but the South mainly, there are a lot of people. The South is a SLPT dominated area. Mathura, Galle, all these areas are SLPT dominated. And they all voted trusting the president to do a good job with this whole thing. And when the health minister was and advocates alternative medicine, when people actually flocked. I know personally that people went in buses from Mathura to Galle to buy this remedy that this guy was making. And then when you have the health minister, kissing the Chinese, I think the first person who got infected with COVID-19, officially, I remember the health minister, went and kissed her on her forehead, and all these things the people didn't, they used it as examples. People were not careful, people are not wearing masks. The first wave, they definitely were not careful. The second wave, they were still not, they were a little bit better than the first one, but the third one, now since people are dying, and even in the South, since people are dying, people have now started taking it a lot seriously, more serious than how people take it in Colombo. But the thing is, I think it's far too late, and the repercussions of this whole thing will be, I think, felt by all of us within a little less than about 2 months is what I predict, that we will be in the full brunt of this, and the South will get it even worse than every other place, all other places in the country.
Right. And why do you say that, Rehaan? What brings you to believe that this will be like the South will be affected far more seriously?
Okay, so basically testing, right? So I remember during the first wave when my PhDs were conducting PCR tests.
Rehaan, you're breaking up very slightly. Is it possible to? Are you on a hands-free?
Sorry. I'm just taking my mic off. Yeah. So basically, can everyone hear me?
Yeah, very clear. Thanks.
Okay. So basically, the testing, I remember during the first wave, the PHIs used to conduct a number of tests a day, and the results used to come within a day. Right now, the PCR test results don't come for at least 12 days. Sometimes it goes up all the way until 2 weeks. The main reason for that is that the South doesn't have, the Mathura district does not have a PCR machine, which is ridiculous because it only cost about 8 million. I remember My wife and her father donated one of the first PCR machines to Jawadanapura. It only cost us about 7 to 8 million. And it's beyond me how they have not equipped a single hospital in the Mathura district with a PCR machine. And the only PCR machine in existence right now in all 3 districts, it's only in Karapitiya.
Right.
So I mean, you can imagine how ridiculous that sounds, where a government is incapable of funding 8 million rupees. You know, they spend so much on so many different things. And I'm wondering why the Yuthukama or whatever fund was not utilized for this. So testing and the delay in testing, because what you have to understand really is that these people, once they get tested, they don't follow proper guidelines. Our PHIs have a really hard time getting them to follow guidelines, and they go here and there, and they end up infecting. They end up infecting. Because it's not like here. They go from house to house. They have a very close-knit community. So unless this whole testing thing is sorted out, it's going to be a massive disaster.
Right. Now, this when you talk about being having it difficult, it being difficult to get people to listen to what the PHI say, and other issues relating to that. I mean, does this connect back to the issue with Susil Indrajit, who we were talking about, who you highlighted the fact, I think, that authorities had not gone to visit him for 3 days, and it was for that reason that he had to step out?
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, the officials also can't be blamed because there's only limited workload that resources they carry out. Now, I know for a fact my PHIs, I have 2 PHIs working for the Urban Council, and both of them are really, really superb PHIs. One is the district secretary for the PHI union in Mathura. The other one is the second in command in the whole of Sri Lanka, just under the head PHI. And these guys work from morning till night. And when I'm saying morning till night, they work with very, very limited resources. So in Susil Indrajit's case, the PHI just couldn't go there, but it's not actually the PHI's responsibility. I mean, it's up to the divisional secretariat because the government promised people rations. Now, when they put people on quarantine, how do you expect these people to survive when the shops are closed?
Right.
And even if you do give them 5,000 rupees, where are they going to go and spend that 5,000 rupees when the shops are closed?
Right. Okay, so just let me understand about the process itself. What is the current process in the south? Or if you want to speak about Weligama itself, what is the process right now? What are the current arrangements for people with COVID-19? How many intermediate care centers are there, if at all, and how many hospitals are equipped to deal with COVID-19?
Okay, so basically in Weligama, we only have the Valana Hospital and the Kotavila Hospital. Both are packed, where there is that people are actually sleeping because it's worse than Ragama. And the Mathura Hospital is also packed. Wallivala East in my ward was the place with the most infected COVID patients. It had about, if I'm not mistaken, we had about 1,600 cases in Wallivala East alone. So when we started this vaccination drive, I have to say that all credit goes out to the PHI and the MOH because we ran, I think, one of the most successful vaccination drives in the whole country. There was absolutely no political interference. I wouldn't go to the centers. I actually would go, but I would only stay for about 1 hour because I'll have a brief chat with the doctors and I'll have a quick discussion with them and I would leave because I didn't want it to get politicized. So in these few days, what we did was we started from the ward system, like what I suggested to Kishan last time during your first Twitter space.
Yeah.
I suggested this be done in Colombo. And a lot of people thought that we couldn't get it done, but the ward system actually worked. People were given tokens to their houses. Every single house in that infected area got tokens and they were given a specific time. So basically the first time was between 9 and 11 and then from 12 till 2. So when Colombo was doing their vaccinations up until evening, we managed to, on the last day, administer, if I'm not mistaken, 1,800 vaccines by 2 p.m. And then it was done by 3. So all this can be done if there's a proper system and if there's no political meddling. But sad to say that around the country, it doesn't seem to work because politicians keep on putting their people in. And that's very sad. I mean, if this system is followed and if it's done by the ward system, you can trust me when I tell you that the whole vaccination drive will be very, very successful. And don't really see that happening right now.
Right. So now going by social media, because that's where we have access to what you're doing, and we see how vocal and visible you are on social media. And it did seem, based on the pictures that we saw, that the vaccination drive had happened in a very orderly manner in Weligama especially. But what I want to know is, did you not have any requests? Did no one come to you and ask you
No. So
at all?
basically, we have the most biased, for my misfortune and Weligama's misfortune. The speaker is the organizer for Weligama. Normally, I really don't understand how the speaker of a country can hold on to a position as organizer. He's also the DDC chairman, and he's also the Weligama Pradeshia district committee. He's the chairman of that as well. So he actually came to the vaccination drive, created a huge issue, bought all his stooges inside. They were trying to run the show like they were doing it, and I really didn't care about any of those things, because it came to a point where the doctor actually yelled at the Weligama Pradesh Sabha chairman and told him to leave the premises because they were trying to get people in. And I mean, when things like this happen, what's the example role that people in this country are going to see? Are they going to believe, but let alone COVID, are they going to believe in the independence of parliament? Are they going to believe that, this guy is non-political? So there was meddling. But to be very honest with you, I didn't get any request because my work ethic is very strict and my discipline is very strict when it comes to me doing my political work. I don't encourage such things, and people know that. So I didn't even get one call. Maybe I would have got about 2 or 3 requesting to get vaccinated, and I told them, please come. The only favor I did for them was I told them, this is the time the vaccination drive is going to start. Please come and stand in line if you belong to these wards. And interestingly enough, my ward, which is Hettividya, was not even listed, and I didn't even list it because the infection rate was so low.
Right.
So my ward wasn't done. So, it went on a system. But yeah, there was meddling, and the Weligama Pradesh Sabha did their vaccination drive about 2 days ago, and it was an utter disaster. And there was one incident where the MOH doctor, I think his name is Dr. Teja Gunasekara, the Weligama Pradesh Sabha chairman walked into one of the vaccination centers, and he took all the tokens which were supposed to be given to people. He put them in his pocket and said, right? So
these things didn't make it to the media.
It doesn't know. I mean, for example, right? This is out of topic, but how many people and how many media outlets speak about that murder? I mean, if it happened in any other country, the minister would have had to resign, and it would have brought a huge burden on the president and the government. But none of that happened. And the fact that the media that we have is so biased, none of it got highlighted. And the doctor actually called me. He actually called me and he told me, please arrange a voice cut. I want to get this through to the media, and I got it done, and it never went on.
Right. So it's clear that not only, despite the fact that what we see on social media may be very selective. So like I said, we were under the impression, or what was clear to us was that Weligama had been a good example, and I'm sure it was. But of course, there were things that went on behind the scenes, where there were where there was a lot of meddling or attempts to meddle. And
So basically, Roel, the Weligama Urban Council vaccination drive was probably the best that ever, the best vaccination drive in the South. I don't know about the whole country, so I'll just say in the South. Yeah. But the Pradesh Sabha was utterly disorganized, and that incident that I mentioned to you was with regard to the Weligama Pradesh Sabha. So Weligama is split into 2. There's an Urban Council and a Pradesh Sabha. So my area went well. Pradesh Sabha not great.
Okay, let's talk about the culture, the political culture, not just at local government level, but in the country in general, and also perhaps some of the legislations that sort of enable this kind of thing. You have spoken about how powerful the Urban Council Act is previously. It also, can you just explain a little bit more in terms of, do you think it's archaic? Is it suited to the times? Do these things have to change?
So if I'm not mistaken, the 1987 Urban Council Act was created by President Premadasa. The reason he did that was because, in my opinion, President Premadasa started off his career at the Colombo Municipal Council. And he wanted to enable the municipal councils to be able to effectively discharge their duties. So that's why the Urban Council Act was created, and it's a very, 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 very powerful act. But the problem with the act is that up until I think the early part of 1990, it was very effective. But then the 13th Amendment came into play. And the 13th Amendment coming into play created the provincial council system and the chief ministers and the governors. So that started clashing. That particular act started clashing with the Urban Council and the Municipal Council Act.
Right.
So in my opinion, the provincial council system is actually a worthless legislation that needs to be scrapped. Because unless the provincial councils are scrapped, the urban councils can't discharge their duties, because there are certain things in the act which you can do, but it clashes with the provincial council act.
Right, but these are now nuanced arguments, right? Like how can young politicians like yourself, who have identified this sort of issue, bring it out into the public sphere? Because these are not things that are discussed generally.
Yeah. So, in my opinion, right, the fact that there is no proper media outlet other than Sirasa for us to actually voice these things out, and also there have been lots of suggestions. I mean, it's not as if the higher powers don't know. They obviously know that this is a worthless thing. And the strange part is that the fact that Sri Lanka does not have provincial councils now, because the South hasn't had provincial councils, if I'm not mistaken, since 2019 or 2018. And some of the things that the urban councils get to discharge can't be done. Some of the duties can't be discharged properly because in the absence of a chief minister, all the powers go to the governor. So for every single thing we have to get, not for every single thing, but for a lot of the major things, we have to get governor approval. And that's also highly politicized now. So your question on how we can change it, I think we can give suggestions, but as newcomers, there's only little we can do. No? So it has to be done through parliament. Right. So the higher powers have to decide that this system is not going to work, because another crazy aspect about provincial councils is that 60% of their budget is allocated towards paying salaries.
So now, Rehaan, tell me, I was listening in on a conversation just yesterday or day before, I think, when Minister Jayawickreme and I think it was Mayantha Dissanayake who were both online. And I think it was Iran who said that the opposition doesn't have enough resources. It doesn't have access to media the way the government does. And even
Absolutely.
and even leaning on social media is restricted because they lean on organic growth. And it's difficult for them to get the message across. Now, as one of the younger politicians who makes very good use of social media tools that are available, do you think that even using social media to discuss this sort of these nuanced topics that are actually more important than anything else? Because it's easy to point fingers at what's wrong, or the effects of what is the effects of or ill effects, but the cause could be due to the legislation, as you have pointed out, and other things like that. So how is it possible for you to use your tools to sort of draw attention to things like this that need to change?
Okay, so if you, for example, look at my social media and the way I do it, most of it is organic growth, and we have been instructed by our party high-ups that we should do the maximum amount of voice clips or video clips on our social media, which we have started doing. But there's only that's only a very little percentage, Royal, of what the whole country sees. Because not everyone in the South has a phone, not everyone in the South has access to social media. A majority of them don't know what smartphones are. Places like Deniaya, places like Kananke, all these areas, Hakmana, Akuressa, most of these people don't have smartphones.
I think we may have momentarily lost Rehaan.
So
that's fine.
Where was I? And how was
you were talking about how not everybody has access to smartphones in the South.
Yes, but so now that trend is changing. Now people are a bit more aware. Because of some of the things the media were doing, because of the things that they were doing during COVID, the misaccurate information they were spreading, there is only so much that you can, there's only a certain amount that you can hoodwink the people. You can't do it all the time. So now that trend is changing, but it's just that I mean, when a lot of people will say that the opposition is being ineffective with certain things, you have to understand that we don't have media coverage. You have to understand that we are a very young party, little more than a year old. Whereas the UMP and all these other parties, the Sri Lanka Freedom Party, the SLPP, they have huge donations coming in. They have a huge business support coming in for them. They have lots and lots and lots of resources. So we as opposition, we don't have those tools. But then again, when things progress, and I'm sure they will, we will get access to all these things. So until such time, we just have to be a little bit more patient. I know it's frustrating. I know it's annoying. But everyone just needs to be a little bit more patient, and I'm sure things will turn back on track.
Right. Speaking of hoodwinking the public, I actually had a question relating to that. I think any politician has two choices, right? You can either hoodwink the public by making the right statements to the media and doing, while you're doing that, you're doing everything you can to protect yourself or protect themselves and who they represent, their families, their connections, the privilege from which they come. And actually, in reality, do bare minimum for the people. And then there's the flip side, where you side with the people, leaving your privilege aside. I'm not speaking about you in particular, but I'm saying in general, anyone who gets into politics, you sort of enter, you have access to, certain, you are privileged in the first place to be able to enter politics, and then you can either
Absolutely.
protect yourself and your kind, or you can side with the people, which not many people do, not many politicians do. So when you when you make a stand like this, which has been very visible, and there are other people also that I see, young politicians who continue to make a stand with the people and align with the people, and not the privileged or the powerful that you represent. What are the unintended consequences, or the unwelcome consequences of siding with the people?
To be very honest with you, there has not been a single moment since I got elected where Sajid Premadasa has spoken to me and told me what to say and what not to say. A lot of people have different opinions about him, but as a leader, he has never ever spoken to me and told me, don't do this and don't do that. And I think that's a pivotal role that a leader should play, because we should be given the freedom to speak the way we want. So I think the fact that freedom has been given to us as members of the party, I think that makes a huge difference. Because I remember when I was functioning under Mr. Jayawickreme, I remember, I, for one, was very, very, very scared to come out to the media and speak, because I wouldn't know, what the repercussions would be. For example, when I requested for Sajid Premadasa to be made the leader of the UMP, a disciplinary inquiry was initiated against me, and I was suspended within 3 days. They took me to court. My court case is coming up, but they go. It's very, very harsh. But in this party, we don't have that. So as long as we all have the freedom, and that's why, Royal, you see people like Rasika, people like Lihini, the younger ones, the ones in my group. I mean, if you see how vocal they are, that's because they are given the freedom to do so.
Right.
So that needs to be there. That freedom has to be there for us to speak the way we want to speak.
Right. So I'm actually going to be having Lihini on next week to speak about the Moratua Council and whatever challenges they're facing there. Okay, let me now just shift it again to Weligama. What are the unique challenges, Rehaan, that you face in Weligama in relation to managing COVID-19? And maybe even outside of COVID-19, what are some of the challenges that you face that are unique to Weligama?
Okay, so if I'm sure aware, Weligama has a huge fishing community, and the sole bread and butter of Weligama is what the fishing community makes for their families. So and also they're a very sensitive community, as in most of them are not educated. Most of them don't think before they speak. They are very how would I say, they're very brash when you take them in for meetings. So balancing that has been somewhat hard for me, but I've managed to do that. So far so good. And also another unique problem that we face is the fact that the speaker gets involved in almost every single political decision that's made in Weligama. And that is, for me, that's the worst thing that could happen, because he had spoken to me many times over things that you would not even imagine. I'll just give you one example. we had a illegal. So we had basically 17 or 18 fishing stalls in Weligama, which were done by the Weligama Urban Council. So one of these guys broke one of his contracts, and we had to evict him. And I remember the speaker calling me directly, and he said, "Rehaan, don't do this." And I said, "I'm very sorry." I said, "Please don't get involved in my work." But when there's political meddling, and I know that the question that you asked was was in regard to COVID-19, but then I used that as an example because the political meddling is the most unique problem we face in Weligama. And the fact that we have someone in the constitution who's, I think, the third or fourth in the constitution meddling with petty political things, it makes it even more worse. Royal,
Right.
can you hear me?
So yes, I can hear you. Right, I understand. So when you speak of political meddling, that's something that's now, as is very clear to all of us, it's something that is spread right across the country and not only to Weligama. But when it comes to changing the political culture, now you referred back to the younger politicians and being given the space to be vocal. But
Yeah.
do you all also have the space? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
Okay. So do
Hi, Royal.
you all also have hi? Yeah. So do you all
Yeah, I can
also
hear
have
you.
the space to make the changes that you want, Rehaan? If you want to change the political culture, do you all have the space to make the changes you want?
I'll give you a good example, right? I remember when Mangala was the Minister of Foreign Affairs. I can safely tell you that not once had he ever called me, and and he was a Mathura district leader.
Right.
So there were ample moments where he could have called me and asked me for favors and do this and that. There is not even one favor that Mangala ever asked from me. Right. And I think that matters. I think when you're a leader, and when you're a leader in that level, you should know that meddling is not the way to go about it. And to be honest, not just Mangala, but no one, even in the UMP, even though I'm not with the UMP anymore, not a single minister ever called me and disrupted my work.
Right.
But all that changed when this government came into play. The most amount of calls I have got from the speaker. And I'm telling you that I want to use this space to actually bring it out to people. Right. Because I've mentioned this on the media so many times, it never gets on. I've given voice cuts to Derna, I've given voice cuts to Hiru. It has never, ever come on. So, with regard to your question, I think, people, you need the caliber of politicians like Sajid, Mangala, and, many others, Rehaan, Harsha, you need that type of politician who won't meddle in your affairs.
Right. So this culture, now Rehaan, this is a question I asked Mr. Rasamanikam last week when I was speaking to him. I asked him if a change in government would actually bring about a change in political culture. Is that something you believe in?
Repeat that again, Barwell. Sorry, my son just walked into my room and I just...
That's fine.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, I asked Mr. Rasamanikam last week when I was speaking to him if he actually believed that a change in political power would reflect in a change in political culture. So do you truly believe that if the opposition comes in?
It's very interesting. It's very interesting you asked me that because I was having a chat with one of my very close friends the other day, and we had the same discussion where we were wondering how are we going to progress as a country. And then we came to the simple conclusion that all we need is one man. All we need is one man who will come forward either to become the president or the prime minister or whatever legislation works at that time. And that person has to come in front of the people and say, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm... if he wants to, for example, abolish the executive president, he needs to make that part of his election manifesto. For me, the only man, in my opinion, who I thought at that time was capable of changing the political culture of this country was Karu Jayasuriya. He was one of my dear family friends, and he's also one of my mentors, just like Mangala. And I believe that he is one of the only men who will actually come into... if given opportunity at that time, in 2015, for example, I'm pretty sure he would have come and he would have fulfilled the 100 days to the dot. He would have abolished the executive presidents because that's one of his biggest. And I just use Karu as an example because you need that mindset. You need someone who will come in and say, look, this is what I'm going to do. This is the plan that I'm going to use. And they need to put it out on a referendum. I was having a chat with Dinidu the other day, And it needs to be done through a referendum, and it hasn't been done. I mean, when is the last time that we've heard a referendum taking place?
So Rehaan,
Politicians are basically elected on a certain set of values, Royal, and they come and do the exact opposite.
Correct. I mean, that has been the culture for a while. But I think my more pertinent question here is, and this is me just speaking on behalf of a lot of people who have been raising these issues. You personally believe, and you've said this publicly, that Sajid Premadasa would be the leader capable of bringing this change. Now, I know the minute we open this up for questions, there's going to be questions about Sajid Premadasa. I was in a spaces a few days ago also where a lot of the questions related to him as a leader. I do know that people, this is not my personal view because I don't have a personal view. I might as well make that clear. I'm doing my job here. But there's a lot of people here who believe that it's not just the government that is failing, that it's also the opposition that is failing. Objectively speaking, Rehaan, do you think the opposition is doing enough? And do you think Sajid Premadasa could be an actual effective leader?
To be very honest with you, Royal, I find that, I find it very interesting. And I think people are entitled to their own opinions. There are a lot of people who are close to me on Twitter who write things against Sajid. I never go to reply because I believe in something. And that belief I had in Sajid started not just a few days ago, not even in 2015, but just after I left school, after my O-levels. I remember meeting him once, and then I realized this man is one day going to lead this country. There were a few reasons for that. It's because, it's always easy to criticize, well, but the same people criticizing Sajid should know that Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe was the opposition leader from 1994 up until now, right? And up until 2018, Sajid didn't have his own. Up until 2019, Sajid didn't have his own party. Okay, and starting a party from scratch, it's very hard work. I mean, it's very, very easy to criticize from outside. It's very easy to say, we should do this, we should say that. But that being said, I also don't agree with a few things that he said, but he has given me the freedom and so many other people the freedom to directly engage him, right? We did directly. I mean, for me, that is a pivotal role a leader has to play. And the fact is, he's a great listener. Right? And if you look at the criticism that he gets, you seem to think, what are these how so now some people say he uses too many big English words, okay, and that he uses too many big words, he goes to Yala. But for me, I would much rather have a man speaking big words rather than a murderer or someone who goes and kills people or someone that orders people to be killed.
Right.
That is the rationale I look at. And in all honesty, when he goes to Yala, that's his pastime, that's his hobby. He doesn't go out partying. He is a very, very, trust me when I tell you, Royal, I know the man from scratch, and he lives a very, very, very simple life, right? I once asked him, I joked around with him about a year ago, and I said, boss, can I buy you, shall we get you some shirts? And why do you always wear white? And he gave me a very interesting answer. He said, Rehaan, when I go in the morning to my work, I'm in the vehicle for the most of the day. And I have the same stuff because it's easy for me to wear, right? And he's a very simplistic leader. So criticisms may be there, Royal, but then again, that's opinions. No, opinions can be given. How we take it and how we implement the thoughts in those opinions are a different story. So I'm pretty confident that he will succeed, but it needs a little bit of time.
Right,
but that being said, I do agree that some of the, now for example, I personally didn't agree with the fact that he wanted the vaccines given to the clergy. I didn't personally agree with it, but the thing is, as a party member, I can't openly talk about these things on Twitter, but I brought it up with him, and he's taken it well. He has his opinion on the matter. I have my opinion. Nihini probably has hers. Rasika has hers. And that's the beauty of the SJB, that we are free to speak the way we want, like what I told you before, Royal.
So all this criticism about him being, out of touch with reality and all of these, you've seen the memes, you've seen the sort of things that he says that's been said on social media about him as a leader. But you believe that he, given time, that he will be able to step in and fulfill the role.
And Royal, there's something like this, right? This is a very, It's a very interesting point because yes, you do get people criticizing him on Twitter. You do get people criticizing him on Facebook. But I can tell you honestly, the downtrodden and the poorest of the poor don't see Sajid that way. They still see him as a leader because we have to understand that this man got, no matter what, he ran the current president had 2 NGOs working full time for him for a year for his presidential campaign, right? Mr. Ranil Wickremesinghe gave him his confirmed his candidacy just about 2 months prior to the election. And even by doing that, without a party, not even being the party leader, he managed to get 3.9 or 3.8 million votes, right? And that's something. That's a considerable amount of votes. And also the fact that he ran in Hambantota. I mean, interesting enough, no one speaks about the fact that he is one of the only politicians to ever beat Mahinda Rajapaksa election.
Right.
If I'm not mistaken, in 2000 or 2002, he beat Mahinda, the current prime minister.
Right.
And a lot of people don't see that. And all this propaganda saying that Sajid can't do this and that. I mean, between all of us on this space, we all know how that started. There were bot farms in operation.
Right.
There were videos made about him. They called him Putano, and they went on a huge campaign against him. And that's the effects of that campaign is what we are feeling now. But just like the way the media distorted facts and lied to people, one day people will understand that he is a doer and he can work. It just takes time.
Right. So now, Rehaan, what I'm going to do is we've hit the 45 minutes mark pretty much. I'm going to open up the space for questions. I'm sure you'll have a lot of questions.
Oh, God.
And you will have plenty of time to field them. But yeah, I will open it up now to everybody here on our Twitter Spaces. If you have a question for Rehaan, he's proven to be quite vocal. He's spoken quite openly about things that some of the other party members have not spoken about. So if you do have questions that you'd like to direct at him, all you have to do is hit the little mic button on the left and you will come into a queue and get to ask your question. We have Budu. Budumalli, hi.
Yeah, hi Royal, and
Hi.
first of all, thank you Royal and Raw team for doing this to me. It's continuously doing in superb spaces.
Thank you.
And thank you getting Rehaan on board for today.
Budu, 1 second, I'm a big fan, okay?
Thanks, Baja. Yeah, the question I have is, I think Rehaan continues to talk about, not only Rehaan, all young politicians talking about this gap between the youth and the general public and the young politicians. And then again, the young politicians to big seats. Every time we say, okay, the ideas are not flowing and they're not listening to us, this and that and all. So we are continuously talking about this issue. And no one is trying to fix this issue. And there are enough examples out there in the world, like how other people are working towards this. Not only out there world, in the Sri Lanka, a lot of NGOs are working to capacity building and connect youth to the policymakers. But why, as a opposition or in the government figures, they're not doing anything to fix this gap between the public and the policymakers, especially youth?
I absolutely agree with you. I don't really know how to give you a definitive answer for that, Budu, because I do agree with you. There's a huge gap, and there are suggestions that we are making. For example, the Samagi Taruna Balavege, which I'm the vice chairman of. We are doing as much as we can, but it's not easy. It's not easy because the youth sorry, Roel, that's my son. Yeah, so basically there are a lot of programs that we are doing, but all of this, Budu, it requires, as an opposition, it's very, very difficult. It's very, very difficult for us to do as much as we want to do because of the fact that there's a very huge issue when it comes to funding, and the SJB has a huge issue when it comes to funding. So I think when there's a time that we will come into the government, I don't know whether I'll be in parliament or not by that time, but we'll be doing as much as we can. But all that can be done, Budu, if we get a government. If not, there's only very little that we can do.
Yes, I heard that. And what I see, Rehan, this is my opinion. Nobody really keen on doing the strategic management to fill the gap. Now, everyone keen on getting to the parliament or getting the next leader and this and that. But we have to believe that if someone fix this gap, that is where the winning comes out. Because if
Absolutely.
you see
I
the
agree. On
Nepal,
point. Yeah.
Bangladesh, Pakistan, all these countries who have fixed this communication gap, not only even here, even the Trump did it. So the moment you fix this gap, the gap between the people and the policymakers, they are going to be the winner. The only thing what I see is we don't have the technical idea how to do it, and the other thing is the strategic portion of it. Unfortunately,
Budu,
we're
if
not
you don't
listening to the expert.
Budu, if you don't mind me interrupting, there was one thing that I missed telling you, right? So the way that we have done what we can do is basically the leader has instructed us. Now, basically, we have to form committees. In each ward, we have to create a committee. So, for example, Weligama has 87 Grama Sevaka divisions, and out of that 87, we have created 87 subcommittees and so on. So, one thing that the leader was very, 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 or Sajid was very, very vocal about was he wanted us to create WhatsApp groups, right? So, all 87 of these wards are now on WhatsApp, for example, on my phone, right? So whatever correspondence we have gets shared through that group, because he believes a lot in technology and technological advancements and all that, and that itself has gone a long way, and it has gone to the point where I got a message from the person on Twitter, one of my friends on Twitter, who actually, I'm not sure whether Royal saw it, but sent me something where a Grama Sevaka has created a WhatsApp group with 584 participants and active participants. So I think these are a few of the things that we can keep on doing. But then you're absolutely on point. There's much left to be done. And thanks a lot. And I would like to ask you, Budu, whether you would like to get involved in whatever capacity you can to give out your suggestions so that we can get it implemented.
Thanks, Ryan, for that. Yes, I saw that Grama Sevaka is doing amazing job, because that is one of the communication gap minimizing between the people. And
yes,
I think as Sri Lankans, most of the politicians, they don't have the idea of the bigger networks in Sri Lanka. Now,
yes,
I will give one example. The temple is Sri Lanka's biggest network.
yes,
Temples and the chief monks, and then the Grama Sevaka, and then the PHI. These are the biggest networks in Sri Lanka. But unfortunately, government is really don't care about these things. Even the opposition, if they would have used this network, this gap between the people and policymakers would have minimized it. And that's just one example. And there are so many technical points.
And that's why, Budu, one of the reasons that I was actually, I may have my political differences with Namal, we may disagree with a lot of matters, but I actually, just like Kishan, I vouched. I vouched in the sense I believe that if he utilizes, because he has now 6 very powerful institutions under him when he got this new portfolio, and I'm sure that if he actually concentrates and if he gets a correct team to do it, it can start from there. And it can. But one major problem that successive governments have is the fact that when something successful is implemented, the person that comes the next time scraps it. So hopefully Namal will do a good job, and by the time and when and if one of our governments come into play, we can implement what he has done or what he's going to do during his tenure.
True, agreed with that. Yeah, Royal, I'll pass the mic.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rehaan.
Thanks, Budu. Take care.
Thanks, Budumali. And also, I just wanted to say, I missed that story about the Grama Sevaka officer using WhatsApp, but that's very interesting. And what you said about what both of you discussed about using technology, in a far better way. Also, Rehaan, what you said was interesting about WhatsApp groups being used in the wards. These are, I don't know who else does this in terms of like other parties, but it's really nice to see that happening. Okay, so we have Isha, I think, is next. She has a question.
Hi, Rehaan.
My first Twitter space. How are you, Isha?
I'm good. I just wanted to kind of bring the conversation back to COVID and down south, if you don't mind. Obviously, you mentioned that a lot of the people down south, their main, in my understanding, was they're the fishing community or they are working in tourism and hospitality management, which obviously are both sections of society right now that are heavily kind of impacted and attacked by COVID-19. So I just wanted to know that for them to sustain themselves, whether right now we have any kind of Well, two questions. Does the state have any kind of plan that you know of to provide some sort of relief? And also, in your capacity in
Yeah.
Weligama itself, do you have any plan in place? That's basically what I wanted to ask. Hello?
Isha, I got the second part, but I missed out the main question. What was the question again, Isha?
So basically, as you mentioned, a lot of the people sustain themselves
Hi,
down
Isha.
south.
I got the second bit, but I got it. I got it. Okay. So, Isha, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Rehaan,
Yeah, I
I
can
think
hear
you're
you. So
lagging a bit.
basically, that's yeah. Is it okay
Hold on.
now?
I think so. Did you get the whole question?
Should I repeat my question or?
No, I think just hold on a second. I think Rehaan is dropping in and out.
Okay.
Rehaan?
Yes.
Okay. Did
Can you hear?
Did you get the entire question, or do you want Isha to
Yeah,
repeat it?
I did.
Okay,
So
awesome.
that's a really super question, right? That I was going to talk about it a little bit later into this. So the government has no clear mechanism. Okay, people are put on quarantine, but the government doesn't actually provide them any sort of relief at the moment. They did it during the first wave. We did it as an urban council, but then again, these people's livelihoods. They are more or less day jobs. No, the majority of people in Weligama do day jobs. Either they are fishermen, or either they work as so different things, right? But anyway, day jobs. So there is no clear plan for that. So the government needs to come up with a strategy. And just like Dr. Ravi mentioned, a lockdown should have been done as a last resort. But while the thing is that while the lockdown is in effect, we are not maximizing it by doing the things that we should do, which is testing, and more testing. So, for example, the man that was killed in Weligama, he was actually a person. Now, a lot of people don't talk about this, but he was a diving officer at the Port Authority. He was drawing over 100,000 rupee salary, which is pretty good, but considering the fact that he's from Midigama, which normally, if you look at a ratio, people don't get that salary that he was getting. But it's pathetic, the fact that when he called that particular PHI, when he called him and when he said, I don't have food in my house, he was not given a clear answer, and he was killed while he went to buy food. And I don't really know how often it's happening around the country, because this is just something that came to my attention. So I can't even imagine what other people are going through. So people are hungry. People don't have food. People don't have money. So I suggest to the government, I can see quite a few people listening in. I can see Mr. Kasalingam listening in, who's a big part of this government, and he's very close to Minister Amal Rajapaksa. So I think you guys just need to sit down, not in big rooms to satisfy one's ego, but you all need to clearly draw up a plan for this, because like I said, Roel, this is turning out to be a disaster. And if you thought Easter Sunday was bad, multiply that by 100, and that's what you'll get with COVID.
You're right. Isha, does that answer your question, or do you have a follow-up?
No, it does actually. I really like the fact that you mentioned stop meeting up in big rooms just to satisfy your ego. I think that's something that a lot of politicians need to realize in this country. So thank you for pointing that out. And thanks, Roel.
Thanks.
No worries. Let me just check if we have any other speakers in the queue. If there's anyone else who wants to ask a question, you can use this time. You just have to press the little purple mic, or the little mic on the left-hand side, and you will fall into the queue. Let me just check once more. I don't think we have anyone else in the queue. Rehaan, we can continue with our conversation. If someone else does hop up, yeah, we can go back to that at the end of the discussion. So to follow up on what Isha asked, what can we do about this? Is a question that I had actually. Okay, we do have a speaker. Hi, Kalani.
Hi, Royal. Hi,
Hi.
Rehaan. I do have a
Hi,
question,
Kalani.
which is not really specific to the topic, but it
That's
does
fine.
interest me, and I would like
Go
to
ahead.
have your thoughts about it. So many conspiracy theories around, especially with this ship deal. Does the
Yeah.
party intend to, weigh in on the matter? Because it doesn't really help to, reassure the public. After all, the government or the opposition should be responsible to reassure faith of the public to, not fear the things that
Yeah.
have to deal with. We continue to deal with on top of the pandemic. Any thoughts on
Yeah.
that?
Okay. So then again, Kalani, I'm coming back to what I said before. Media plays a big role in this, right? There are lots of things that we as opposition have said that doesn't really reach out to the people. The people can't be blamed for that. We can't be blamed for that. But then again, it's a very sincere sort of concern that people have, not just about the ship. But then again, it's very interesting you asked that, because I had a chat with my father-in-law, who is a qualified marine engineer, and he told me that during this incident where the ship initially caught fire, what the government should have done was they could have got advice from salvage specialists, or people who are experts on salvage, right? That wasn't done. We were just going ad hoc. I don't know why the ship was allowed in the country in the first place. It's beyond me. But one of the main reasons that I don't talk about it as vocally as I should is because I have very little knowledge about maritime affairs, and that may be a disqualification for me. But my theory is that I'd rather not talk about things that I have no idea about. But that being said, there should be people in our party who will come out in the next few days, because I think we're enlisting the help of a few experts to speak about this matter. So I think that it's very important to get experts to talk about this. This is not something that politicians can, harp on about, unless, of course, that politician is qualified in maritime affairs. So it needs to be done in a more professional aspect. But that being said, Kalani, a lot of things have been said about it, and it's very sad that the media doesn't put it out. So that's another thing, Royal, that I mentioned, that unless we have widespread media support, not just from one channel but from all channels, the message doesn't get across to the people.
Fair enough. Kalani, does that answer your question?
It does, and I hope your party would be able to organize something, to educate the public on this, rather than misinformation.
I will. I'll just jot that down, Kalani, and I'll
Great.
bring it up with the seniors, and I'll put your suggestion through, because all the suggestions that I get today, I'm just jotting down and I'll put it across to them as well.
Great, thanks.
Because I think that's what I think, Kalani, Twitter space should be about, right? I mean, it's not just listening to you guys and me answering your questions, or you guys listening to me, right? Whatever proposals that you all put, because you all tune in eager, and whatever you all say will be brought forward. Whatever reasonable thing, not unreasonable things, but definitely what you said, Kalani, I'll be putting that across.
Thanks, and thanks, Royal, for the great content.
No worries. Thanks, Kalani, and thanks for the question. Rehaan, I hope you're enjoying yourself fielding all of these questions. I think we have another speaker, Chanch.
Hi, Royal. Hi, Rehaan.
Hi.
So
By the way, guys, I'm going to ruin something for Chan. Chan is one of my good friends. He's also Mangala's.
Really? Okay.
Thanks.
Expose.
I think I have qualified for better things these
Sorry,
days.
I did that, Chan. Sorry, I blew your cover.
Yeah. I was hoping I qualified for more interesting things these days.
And Royal Chant is also the founder of Kibula Kitty.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
So
I've seen that.
That I earned myself. So much. I'm quite proud of both, but I'm also particularly proud of that. Anyway, Rehaan, I think.
Hi, Chan. How's it going?
Good. I've been listening, very pleased with all of this, and now I sent lots of urgence.
You're my biggest fan.
Yes, but
and my biggest critic.
And one thing that I will say right off the bat is I keep asking Rehaan why, when he uses sort of all these easy tools on social media to communicate with people and to do so authentically, why the rest of not just his party, but some of the other members of the opposition don't wield those tools at their
Geez, thanks,
disposal.
John.
So that's a note to take back. Please, the others are welcome to the table to talk, because I think the audience is very much there, especially when they see someone authentically kind of being clear about who they are and what they want to do. Kalani then also stole one of the other questions I was going to ask, particularly because Weligama and its voter base, who are or the fact that it is a fishing community, how this is really going to roll out an effect. Because I am concerned, I saw from the first lockdown how this, us being travel restricted, and I understand that if we were doing it, and the outcomes of that were, fully was to hopefully then allow us to be safer and better to function, would have worked. But I feel like right now I'm seeing just a continued sort of disparity and economic impacts that are happening to the
Mm.
farming communities, the fishing communities.
Yeah.
And for the few people we know, when we ask them, is the help coming to you? How are you going to survive? What is that? The mechanisms are not working. The mechanisms can be politicized. And we are, I think, failing in all these cases, including in the Cecil Indrajit case, to realize that we're working with people, other humans, and that they are facing really serious difficulties. And I'm seeing a lot of stories amplifying greed, and I see the public stepping in to do the distributive fairness, equality, economics that the government should be doing.
Shan, so I heard everything that you said, but what was the question again?
I just want, since you are talking about COVID in the South, if you could talk about, let's say, the communities, in particularly, let's say, the fishing community,
Yeah.
and how they are maybe being impacted by either
Okay.
you want to talk about the what's just happened in Negombo and how that's going to play out, but also
Yeah.
just farming, those
So
communities and COVID, and what the
okay.
government could do. Let's ask
So
them as the opposition.
okay. So interestingly enough, Chanj, I'm sure you know Kapparatota, right? Kapparatota, which is in Weligama, which is in my urban council limit. A few days ago, a small shipping vessel disappeared. I immediately called Kanchana. Kanchana managed to speak to the relevant people, get the ship back, because they didn't carry a GPS machine. But the reason that they went out to sea was because they didn't have food to eat. Right? Because of the fact that they were Kapparatota had a huge surge in COVID numbers. Most of the area was cordoned off. And when they went on the shipping boats, the Sirasa correspondent told me that when interviewing the family, they said the reason they went on the ship was not to catch fish and eat them later, but because of the fact that when you go fishing, you're given a few packets of biscuit and you're given some water. So that's a when you look at that scenario, that's actually frightening, because they didn't essentially go to get fish. They went because of the fact that these biscuit packets were offered to them, and they threw their lives at risk. So that's just one aspect to it. The other aspect is that the fishing community in general have this major problem where the government has banned them from using small nets. Okay, small nets in the sense they are called kudadel. Basically, it was done ad hoc, just the way that the fertilizer ban was done, and the turmeric ban, and the import ban, and the export ban, and all these things. There is no proper mechanism that successive governments, not just this government, don't get me wrong, I'm not going to lay the blame squarely on this government, because I think every single government has been responsible for this, where there has been no mechanism that has been put in place. So how that can be fixed, Chanj, is that the relevant minister, and I'm sure Kanchana is doing it, he may be my political, we may have disagreements just like I have with Namal, but Kanchana is doing a very, very interesting thing where he's getting experts. He's getting the NARA involved. So the NARA also falls under him, where he's getting expert opinions. He's not basically doing a Rohit Abe Gunawardena by going and looking at a ship from a binoculars and thinking, oh my God, is it sinking? How do we stop it? We should put water in it. And, you can have ministers, right? But you need to have, like how your uncle, like for example, how Mangala had it. I remember Mangala, a lot of people say that he had no in-depth knowledge of finance, and that may be true, because Mangala did not follow finance. He was a fashion designer, and he was a very good fashion designer. But Mangala surrounded himself with people who gave him correct advice. So if all the ministries in this country do that, especially the Ministry of Fishing, Ministry of Ports and Shipping, and I think, honestly, my opinion is that Kanchana should be appointed as Minister of Ports and Shipping. But that's just my opinion because he's young. And Chanch, you know that we as youngsters, we are very vocal about things that seniors are not vocal about. So if all these ministers have an expert panel guiding them, for example, like what Rosie had, the mayor had done with Kishan. I mean, I know for a fact Kishan does not draw a salary. I know he's doing this FOC. I'm not really sure whether I'm supposed to say that, but
no, he did say it last time. He did.
Yeah, and he's doing it FOC, and I've just appointed. I've got his permission. I'm appointing him within the next couple of days as one of my advisors in the Weligama Urban Council. Something that he happily said that he would take on. And you know, we need experts. Chance. This is not something that politicians can do. Politicians are good to go get votes and, you know, for charisma purposes and, you know, to build a government, because a lot of people say that we don't need a government, but you and I both know, and everyone who's listening knows that that is a stupid argument. You do need a government, but it's just that you need a good government.
Yeah.
And that's what we're lacking now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chanch, for the question, and thank you, Rehaan, for answering it. Of course, we'll get after we're done with the questions side of things, we will get deeper into some of the issues that Weligama and the South is facing very specifically. But before we move on to that part, we have another speaker. We have Fauzan Farid.
Hi, Rehaan. Good afternoon. Royal, thank you.
Hi, good afternoon, Fauzan.
Just a quick one, Rehaan. I mean, most of the Sri Lankans, including myself, we are sick of seeing the same thing over and over with the governments, you know, who want to be the best. Now, we see you taking a different direction, you know, despite being in the opposition, you are trying to get yourself involved with the activity with the ongoing government like Kanchana. I saw a tweet from you a couple of days back thanking Kanchana for providing the vaccination. And you just mentioned about the both scenario. Other than yourself, how best the opposition young politicians get involved in the government activities so that, you know, people who voted for the government or the opposition both get benefited?
Okay, so that's a good point. That's a good question that you brought in. So how that's been done with the SJB is that I can honestly tell you that the SJB has a very vibrant group of young people working. We take ideas from, you know, a lot of people. If I'm not mistaken, I think, for example, my friend Kusum Vijayatilaka, whose father was heading HNB, Mr. Rian Vijayatilaka, I think Kusum was just appointed by Sajid to formulate our foreign policy, because Kusum is he's currently, I think he's going to do his PhD in regard to conflict management. He writes a lot of articles. So we get a lot of people involved. And Fauzan, I have to honestly tell you that this may be very hard to believe, but Sajid reads every single WhatsApp group message across the board. So let it be the STB, SJB youth, let it be the women's wing, let it be the senior, the professionals wing, you know, the finance wing. You know, he actively participates in every single one of these groups, right? And I think that's very important. That's very important. We need to have people who are not only leaders who, you know, give meetings inside big rooms. We need leaders who can lead us. So in that perspective, he's very active in all these groups. So I think active participation from everyone concerned, and I know for a fact, Iran, Honorable Iran is very active on the WhatsApp groups. Harsha is very active. So I think we have a very good group of people. So that's why I'm going to make this opportunity for us to say that it's always easy to criticize Sajid, but you have to understand that there is absolutely no point blaming one man, because the team that he has surrounded himself with, a majority of them are good people and honest people. So the time, again, you know, when we get a government intact, the people will be able to see it much better.
Rehaan, the point is how best as oppositions, y'all could get in government projects like how you do with involving Kanchana and so on and so forth. I don't see many others do the way you do it, Rehaan.
That's because
How best could it be done? Getting opposition involved in the government projects and even the smaller
yeah.
ones.
The thing is, Fauzan, the reason I'm like this is because it's inbuilt in me. I hate injustice. I've been very vocal since the time I was in school. Would have fallen in trouble a few times, but I'm very, very, very concerned when something happens to people, because I think politicians are no one without the people, and it's because the people that they're elected to these positions. But then again, the majority of these politicians, you have to understand. I mean, why did people vote for the president in 2020? We need to ask ourselves that question. The reason they voted for them is because the fact that he ran with Viatmaga, and people thought that the people that the president appoints will be professionals, right? But that didn't turn out the way it turned out. So when you said that most of you guys are sick of politics, yeah, rightfully so. Rightfully so. Even, for example, my wife hates the fact that I'm in it. But what I'm saying is, yeah, you're right that as opposition, we should be a lot more vocal about it. But the thing is, we are. And then again, it comes back to that main point that I spoke about quite a few times. It's the media coverage, the fact that we are not getting proper media coverage. But then you can see that trend changing with the way, for example, Hiru is reporting now. You see it changing little by little, and the others will also fall into place. So I encourage, like, my main thing is, I addressed a meeting. I was invited to to be one of the keynote speakers at a event conducted by the International Republicans Institute. It was called Emerging Leaders, and Lihini was also part of that. It's very important, Fauzan, for politicians, young politicians, to not start at parliament. I think, parliament should not be the first place that they start. They should start at local government level, because local government level lacks people coming into it with sound education or sound policy. So if the youngsters can start at this lower level, like how me and Lihini and a few of us have started, by the time we go to parliament, we'll be fully equipped to deal with what's going on. So right now, I don't see that happening, but hopefully I think that trend will change.
Thank you, Ray.
Most welcome.
Thank you. We also have Kishan lined up as a speaker. Kishan?
Hi, Royal and Rehaan. First, do I have permission
Hi,
to
Kishan.
bring Rehaan's here? He's saying various things about me.
Oh God.
This no.
You're getting back at me for what? Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Seriously, I mean, I think Rehaan, he two very important points. I think
Kishan, there's some feedback. Do you, if you're on a hands free, I would suggest you take it off and maybe try again.
If I'm on a hands free, I do.
Just take the hands free off and just see if you can speak directly into the phone through the speaker.
It's on the power charging. Is that better now?
Yeah, better, clearer.
Okay, it's on charging. Okay, so two things. One is, Rehaan brought up this point of using professionals to help politicians, and the politicians being there to actually market this. I think this is a very crucial thing. There is no point getting professionals. A lot of professionals, when you get them, they will tell you policy which may not necessarily sit well with the population. So I think Rehaan identified one very important thing where the politician concentrates on selling the policy rather than being the architect of policy, because we see things going wrong because politicians have, like he said, a lot of areas. I mean, you can't expect them to be experts. So I think he said about this local government and people coming through the system, I think is an excellent point, because at the moment what is happening is, if you take parliament, a vast majority of them have come through the local government system. But all of them, if you take a poll of them, 90% won't even have their O levels. That is because the local government system is not attracting people who are educated to come through that. So if educated people join there, rather than trying to go straight into parliament, they clean up the system. The local government system, Rehaan will vouch for that, is a breeding ground for corruption, because that is one place they get used to robbing left, right, and center. So if you have people who are educated and things coming through that system, that's what is important. My question to Rehaan is the SJB ready for that and ready to accommodate people at that level, instead of concentrating on still being this old type of politics, which I think the new generation is totally rejecting. And by 2024, does he agree with me that if the traditional parties do not get their act together, there might be a whole change in the way the electorate thinks and votes for people?
Absolutely, yeah. I agree with you 100%, Kishan.
No, my question is the
And
SJB ready for that?
yeah, so that's a very tricky question because I would personally think that that's the way forward, and I have brought that to the leader's attention multiple times. I basically for example, this again going off topic, I know question, but I remember as soon as Namal was appointed, I think Kishan was one of the first people who said that political differences aside, he wants Namal to succeed because of digitalization, and that's absolutely true. Because when you talk about I read a very interesting interview that Imran Khan, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, did a few days ago. I think it's an old clip, but it just surfaced again, where they asked him in England, how do you stop corruption in Pakistan? He said there's only one way to do it, which is through digitalization. So the reason, and I think Kishan will vouch for this, the reason that most politicians are corrupt in the local government system is because our systems are not computerized. Everything is handled by men and women, and corruption starts right from the clerk all the way up to the respective heads of council. And I can safely tell you, I can't tell you a percentage, but I can roughly guess a percentage by telling you that more than 60 to 70% of all local council chairmen or mayors are highly corrupt. And I'm sure Kishan would agree as well. So I think the SJB, Kishan, I think Sajid gets a lot of advice from different people from different spheres. So, for example, from the legal profession, he'll have a set of legal people advising him. And when it comes to tech, like I told you, he's heavy on tech. He believes a lot that tech is the way forward. So I think all these things, even as a group, as the SJB youth, I was honestly going to, we don't really meet up anymore because of these COVID regulations, but we're due to have a Zoom session, I think within the next month or so, or within the next few weeks. And this is a very interesting point to bring up, because like I 100% agree with what Kishan said, because unless the system is changed, the traditional voter is not going to vote for parties anymore. And in 2024, we will feel the brunt of it. And that may either go really well for us, or it can go horribly wrong. So it's the duty of not only the opposition, but the government, but we all have to get together and fix this and make sure that right people are put into the right positions. And I think people like Kishan, I think if we had, I honestly, not because I know him personally, but I honestly feel that if we had more people like him in different institutions, with the forward-thinking way that he has, and the fact that he does all this FOC, that is the way forward. We need more people like him.
Right. Kishan, does that answer your question?
Yeah, but Rehaan, I think, this is an ideal opportunity because you will have local government elections. I mean, if it goes on schedule, sometime early part of next year. So the only way the parties can show a real desire to change is if they decide that, no, we are going to build people with certain educational backgrounds and certain professional capacities to local government. And previously, these people wouldn't have come because of the Manapa problem, but now that problem is also not there in local government. So it's an ideal opportunity. Yes. And if the main parties do not take advantage of this, I think they are going to lose a historic opportunity, and there will be a big shift otherwise. If not,
absolutely. And I think he's on point. You're on point, Kishan, because I think that 2024 will be a pivotal moment where things might, like I told you, go horribly wrong or horribly or go right. But that's something I'm going to focus on, because I'm also the SJB organizer in Weligama, and the nomination process, as you know, the organizers play a big role in it. And I am going to make sure that the next election, I won't be putting people in just for ego purposes. I will be putting even more capable people like myself. If there are people who are more capable than me, I'll be happy to put them in. Because one thing that politicians lack is Kishan, I'm sure you agree, don't put right people because of their egos. They think, oh, if this guy comes in, he's going to come and cut me. He's going to turn out to be a minister. He's going to end my political career. So that has to be taken out. That has to be completely taken out. And people with qualifications and people who will do good work have to be appointed. Otherwise, this whole local government system is an absolute mess.
Thanks, Kishan, and thanks, Rehaan, for answering that. Sorry.
And let me reiterate, if we actually, that's why I think Rehaan made a good point about identifying this problem. We make blaming national politics and national politicians, but actually the problem is at a very local level, and that is the training ground that we are sending. If you analyze, 90% of the parliamentarians in parliament today will be from the local government system. So
Yeah.
if you don't correct that, this cannot happen.
Yeah, thanks, Kishan. Rehaan, we have 3 more speakers. And then we'll move on to the conversation. I don't want to limit anyone or restrict anyone from asking you a question because I think access is primary. But just a reminder to speakers also that the conversation is being recorded and will be uploaded onto our website and social media for later access. If you don't want to speak, you can always tweet or DM us, and also to please try and keep your questions relevant to the topic as far as possible. But if you don't, we'll return to the topic anyway. Who do we have next? We have Savandi.
Hi, Savandi.
Savandi,
I think.
Hi, Rehaan. I want to speak.
Savandi, you need to turn your mic on.
Shall we move to Nafis in the meanwhile? Nafis, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner, we have seen some cases of police brutality last week, the cases of Sunil Indrajit in your city limits. Do you think the police needs to have more oversight, or if so, what are the steps you've taken to do?
Okay, so there's very little that I can do with regard to the way the police acts and the way police behaves. And that being said, I'm not blaming the entire police force for this, but there are very specific cases where this brutality has gone to a different level. And this is something that happened in Weligama that I was lucky enough to find out about. But like I told Roel before, there are many instances where these things go unnoticed. For example, like what happened in Batiklo. Now, for example, in Batiklo, they said that the youth that died had ingested 4 grams of ice. that seems highly unbelievable because for number one, who in their right mind would take that amount of drugs to begin with? Having drugs is bad enough, but who in their right mind would take that quantity, and why did the cops only blurt it out later? So that comes to the point where, if you notice, during the 2000, I have been the biggest critic of the Yahapalana government, right? But there are certain mechanisms that were put in place, for example, that enabled, DIG Bimshani, who got promoted during our time. That would have never happened if there was no police commission. Now, you have to understand the first thing that this government did when they came into power, when they got the 6.9 million mandate, was that they went and scrapped the police commission. So unless there is a body like the police commission which overlooks the entire department and also holds even the IGP accountable, the system is not going to work. There has to be a body which governs all this, or it has to be independent. But as long as it's politicized, for example, during our 2015 regime, promotions were given by the police commission, but now promotions are given by the IGP, and that too under instructions from different political powers. Now, another good example for that is if I'm not mistaken, either an ASP or the SSP or DIG, I can't really remember. He was a very, very good officer. Again, I can't remember his name, but he was a STF officer. He functioned under DIG Latif. And just because he didn't get along, and just because the fact that he tried to stop illicit liquor, we had a minister writing to the Minister of Police requesting him to be transferred. I mean, that itself shows how weak this system is. What right does a politician have to write a letter to the Minister of Law and Order? And what right does the Minister of Law and Order have to transfer a hardworking cop? So when things like that happen, we have a serious shortage in honest officers who want to do their job properly, because what they think is, what's the point in doing our job if when we do it right, we are transferred, and if we are stooges, we are promoted. So for that system to change, like the main thing that needs to happen is that the police commission needs to be reinstated. It needs to be accountable to parliament. And the fact that this government scrapped it alone speaks volumes.
Right. Nafis, does this answer your question?
Yes, thank you. So just to clarify, you say that the police commission will be enough oversight to prevent these kind of brutality in the future.
Nafis, not just a police commission, but a police commission that's accountable to parliament.
Nafis? Okay, I think he's
Hello.
now a speaker. Hi. Does that answer your question?
Oh my God! What?
Yes,
Nafis,
thank you. Thanks.
Nafis, how old are you, buddy? You're a speaker.
Hello. I think he's back on to speak. He's back to being a listener. If I'm right. No.
I can hear Miss Raymond, but I can't hear the man.
Sweet. How old are you, Nafis?
Hello.
Okay, I can hear. I can see the captions.
Nafis,
Yeah, I'm 14. Yeah.
14. It's really
Oh
great
my
to have
God.
you on. It's really nice to see that youth.
Amazing.
Yeah, youth has taken a different definition now.
Amazing. So, Royal, was
Okay,
it
thanks a lot.
was it
Thanks for
the 14-year-old that just asked me about the police commission?
Correct. It was the 14-year-old.
Oh my God. Okay. Right direction. Way to go.
Awesome. Okay, Rehaan, we have one more speaker, Miss Nad, and after that we're going to just continue with our conversation. Anyone else who wants to ask questions, we'll leave the last 5 minutes perhaps for it.
Royal, very quickly, Royal, is it okay for me to ask what Nafis does? Where does he go to school?
Of course,
and
go ahead.
Yeah.
Nafis, which school do you go to, Nafis?
Nafis, can you hear
Hello.
Rehaan?
Hello.
Hi.
Can you hear?
Yeah, I can hear
I
you.
go
Can you
to
hear
Royal
Rehaan?
College, Colombo. Yeah, I can hear.
Okay. Do you spend a lot of time on Twitter?
Royal, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can hear you, Rehaan. Go ahead. You can speak to Nafis.
Hi, Nafis. How you're 14 and what do you do? Are you in school here or are you abroad?
No, I'm here. I'm in Royal College, Colombo.
Ah, nice. Okay. And and very quickly, Nafis, are you interested in getting into politics one day?
Yeah, because my father is in politics. So yeah, kind of.
What's your dad's name?
Azad Saleh.
Ah,
Right.
wow. Okay, I'm a very good friend of your dad's, and I hope he's doing well. This must be a hard time for you, Nafis, but I'm sure everything will be okay. If you do get to speak to him, please pass him my regards, and I hope something good happens and justice is meted out.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Miss Raymond, for having me.
You're welcome, Nafis. Thanks so much for joining us.
Okay,
bye. Miss Nad?
Wow. Still
Hi.
shocked.
Hi, Ruel. Hi, Rehaan.
Hi.
Thanks for having me.
Hi.
Hi. So my question is about, so it's starting to look like we will actually have to live with COVID for a long time to come. I have 3 questions. I'll first ask the 2, then followed by the third after you answer. My first is do you agree that, especially in the South, we cannot really go back to the old normal?
Yeah.
And if so, what do you envision will have to change to adapt to the new normal within that area from a personal finance, business, digital, and industrial points of view?
Okay. So strangely enough, even though the South was not disciplined during the first and second wave, I can tell you that in comparison to Colombo, and that's what I found very strange, because Colombo has more of a literate society than what you get in the South. But interestingly enough, people in the South are taking this COVID thing very seriously now. And there are lots of entrepreneurs coming up. And how I say entrepreneurs coming up is that we have now started giving licenses for people because they don't have food and they can't go to shops. The Urban Council, along with the Divisional Secretariat, along with the Divisional Secretariats, have started giving out licenses for mobile vendors for them to come to these particular wards and sell vegetables or whatever essential items to be sold. So like what you said, I know it's not going to go back to normal, But I don't really think that the South in particular or an area in particular needs to have a digitalization plan only for that particular district. I think it has to be a broad national plan. So I really hope that Namal gets together with a team and implements a national plan. Because, for example, right, I'll give you this example. The Weligama Urban Council was introduced with an app called ManQA. So what that app basically did, so we passed it in council, but unfortunately we couldn't get it implemented because of COVID regulations and because of the fact that the council was pumping in money for other things. But that app was a superb app where you basically, if you see a broken street lamp, for example, all you have to do is just take a picture and then send it across, and it comes into a central database in the council. So sadly, that wasn't implemented, but it's very, very important, Misnad, for us to have a complete digitalization structure, and we can start it off with the councils. So I think one of the first things that Namal can do, and if anyone of his is listening in, I'm planning on telling him this personally as well. One thing that he can start off by doing is he can make a plan and make every single urban council and municipal council in this country digital. Because that, like what Kishan said, will weed off corruption by about 95%. Because the 95% I put it there because the head of the government, the institute can be corrupt, but the limitations of corruption is lessened by the fact that there's a system in place. So if he really, really wants to fix this, and if he really, really wants Sri Lanka to prosper digitally, he has to get all these systems in place, because unless that happens, he's not going to go anywhere further. Because as long as corruption is there, because people, the faith that people have in this system gets diminished each day. And Kishan knows this more than me. Each day, the faith that they have in this system keeps on going down. So I've just introduced another system in the urban council. I think we spent over 4.5, if I'm not mistaken, it was about 4.5 lakhs that we spent to completely overhaul the digitalization system in the council. So basically, from within the next month or so, people will be allowed to pay everything from their taxes to everything online. So once that happens, people like the revenue inspector and all these other people won't be corrupt. Because of the fact that it's a system in place and because there are checks and balances. So that's going to be introduced. So I hope that Minister Rajapaksa can use Weligama as a model, because if you look at my urban council, you'll see that my urban council is one of the most effectively run urban councils in the South. From the way the people work, from the way that there is no corruption. And I have this policy where it's zero corruption is tolerated. I mean, even if someone steals a rupee, 10 rupees or even $1 million, it's the same to me and they're transferred out. That I'm very strict about all that. So Minister Rajapaksa can use Weligama as a model and try to introduce this system all across the board, because there's no point doing it in just one place. It has to happen across the board.
Thanks, Rehaan, for answering that question. Mr. Did Rehaan answer? You had 3 questions. Did you?
The 2 questions, yes. I need to get back to the third. So the third one is actually, so you mentioned about the Monkey app as well, right? So I had actually used that. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, it was not rolled out where I live in the Hivala some time back. So, I mean, looking at this, it's focusing more towards digitalization, yes. However, what is the plan of the SJB to use data-driven analysis? So, I mean, COVID itself has changed the face of everything, right? So, where instead of you go by a hunch or expert advice, you also want to look at data behind the whole thing, how the situation is unfolding. How does the SJB plan to use this? How do you all plan to use data?
Okay, so like I told you, like I told everyone here before, the leader of the SJB is fully into data and tech and all these things, right? He believes in the Singapore model quite a lot. Not the negatives of the Singapore model, but the positives of the Singapore model. So I can't like I said, Mr. I'm not fully equipped to answer that question, because like I told you, there are certain topics that I'm well versed in, and there are certain topics like what I said before about maritime affairs and things that I'm not 100% versed in. So I'm sure that your question, I will definitely be putting it up in our group, because there are certain points and certain questions that I jotted down to bring forward to the group, and that this is one thing that I'm going to talk about. But I won't be able to answer in full because, like I told you, I'm not fully versed in this whole thing regarding digitalization. I just know very basic ideas behind it. But I won't be able to answer that in depth, and I'm really sorry, Mr. because I just don't want to make a fool of myself by talking about things that I don't know about.
Understood, Rehaan. No problems at all. As long as it's taken up, that should be good. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mr.
You're welcome.
Awesome, thank you. So Rehaan, we have more speakers, and I think I have at least half a dozen people on my DMs who have questions that they want to direct to you. But given that we have just about 20 minutes left of our conversation, I'm going to get
Ruel, because I need to.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry, Ruel, but I need to head off at 1 because I already missed 3 calls. I'm supposed to do a press conference on the Weligama murder with Kabir.
Right.
And that I have to move at about 1, so I can answer all the questions as long as I'm done by 1. But I'll be happy.
Yeah, no, what we'll do is we'll switch back to the discussion, and I'm just going to tell everybody who wants to speak to Rehaan, he's accessible on Twitter, of course. If you direct it straight to him or his DM, I'm sure he'll get back to you.
And I answer all questions, yeah. Never not reply on my...
directly. So Rehaan, since we're in the last 20 minutes of our interview, I just want to recap the whole focus of the interview obviously was COVID-19 in the South, with perhaps a specific focus on Weligama, which is your particular urban council. But I think, as we realized even with our last interview with Mr. Shanaki and Rasamanikam, people do have very many other questions that they want to ask young politicians, and I think I personally believe access is very, very important. So we try to accommodate as much as we can. That said, I'd like to bring it back to our focus and just start with asking you a few very quick questions. One is something that I did raise on my own personal Twitter is what can we do to prevent a fourth wave? And what I mean is we've now got used to this cycle where there's the first wave, and then it's terrible and there's a lockdown and people die, and then the restrictions are lifted and people just go right back to normal. Then there's a second wave and it's the same thing, and now we're in a third wave. And at some point, these restrictions will be lifted and people will just go right back to normal till there's a fourth wave, unless there's some mechanism comes into place that prevents this from reoccurring. Is there something that you can, even if not on a national government level, let's talk about Weligama in particular, or even the South, is there something that you all can do on a local government level to prevent this sort of thing from happening again? What can be done? I am wondering if Rehaan has dropped out.
No, I'm here. No. I'm here.
Hi.
So basically, I'm going to talk to you about Weligama because, I'm equipped to answer questions about Weligama. One thing that I want to get done in Weligama that should be implemented across the board is I want every single citizen from every single ward in Weligama to be vaccinated. The vaccination program and the first and second jab is what's going to prevent a fourth wave or the severity of the fourth wave, right? But as long as people are not vaccinated in this country, and as long as we are not going to go across, as long as we are not going to fully implement it, a fourth wave is definitely coming because the vaccination is key. So one of the things that I want to do, Roel, was I was actually thinking about writing to the COVID task force within a few days, and I wanted more vaccines because we initially only got 25,000 vaccines in Weligama, which is actually low. We need to vaccinate everyone in Weligama. So I think if you vaccinate the whole country and if you run a very effective vaccination drive, even if a fourth wave hits, people either won't get sick, or even if they do get sick, the chances of them going to hospital is going to be lessened. They can be quarantined at home. All these things are possible only if a vaccination drive happens.
Right. So now, if given the current situation, which is that we don't have enough vaccinations to, roll out across the country, is there anything that you can do in terms of just limiting people from going out?
That's a very, very tough one, Roel, because we need to speak facts. We need to ask ourselves consciously, are all of us following COVID guidelines properly? I know there are certain times that I have unknowingly broken a rule or two, and I have made sure that doesn't happen again. But one second.
Practically speaking, it's not possible, you're saying?
Yeah, 1 second, Royal, 1 second.
Yeah.
I go with you. Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Royal.
Go ahead.
Hi,
Yeah.
Royal. Sorry, that's a troublemaker, my oldest. So basically,
Yeah.
where was I on, Royal?
So
I can't.
basically, like practically speaking, I mean, this may be a challenge that the government is also facing. So practically speaking, how can you prevent, in the absence of vaccinations to roll out across the country, how can you prevent a fourth wave from happening? How is it possible to let a percentage of the people go out?
It's sad, Royal, that this could have been managed and we could have vaccinated people, but instead we believed in ad hoc medicine, we believed in a lot of pseudoscience, but then there's no point talking about what has happened, but I just brought that into light because it could have been handled differently. But now we have come to the point where people are hesitant to believe what the government says. People are hesitant to go by the regulations that the government's put forward, and the main reason for that is, I mean, that's what I'm saying, Roy. Leadership. When you're a leader, you have to set good examples. You have to set a good precedent. When you don't follow the guidelines, when you allow other people who are influential to break these guidelines, right? What do we expect from people? But then it's very easy. It's very, very easy for politicians to then again lay the blame on the people and say, oh, we told them this, but they're not going to listen. But why would they listen when people are allowed to have parties in hotels? When people go flouting when the Minister of Law and Order does not wear a mask at an official function, right? When he puts up a picture of himself on Facebook without a mask, what do people think and how would people react? So the only way forward is that the leaders need to be exemplary. The leaders need to show people or give people an example of how to act. For example, you see that happening in the States. You see that happening in politicians in other countries. You will see ministers in Denmark riding a bike to work. You have to give these people these examples. So as long as all these ministers and all their cohorts are running around like headless chicken, pretending that there is no pandemic, what else do we expect from people? And also, Royal, when the police stand idly and during the Dhammika incident, I remember in Kegol, that entire road was full of people, right? So what sort of example does that give to them, right? And half of them are not even wearing masks.
Right.
So the government needs to take this very seriously because there is going to be a time where our economy is going to collapse, right? If I'm not mistaken, we are in a budget deficit of 1.5 trillion rupees, right? We have massive installments coming up that we need to pay to the World Bank and the EU and all these different places that we have taken loans from, right? So unless the COVID situation is managed properly, tourism has already now taken a huge hit. Lots of my friends have closed down their businesses. The others have gone abroad, right? The hotels that had maximum occupancy during season time in Weligama are now basically like ghost hotels. Okay, so the leaders need to take this very seriously because just quoting what Kishan said, otherwise in 2024, people might take a drastic change and that might either benefit us or that might even drive us further into turmoil.
Right. Very quickly, Rehaan, I just want to ask now with the MB Express Pearl and all of the plastic pellets that have been, washing ashore from right up from Chilao to, I think, is it Midigama in the south?
Yes.
Has it hit Weligama? And
yes, it has. So basically, Midigama Royal is part of Weligama.
Okay.
It's not part of my urban council, but it's part of the Pradesh Sabha. But Midigama is part of Weligama. But not only in Midigama, just a few days, the Kaparatura beach, which is okay. So in terms of telling you where it is, so if you've been to Weligama Royal, you've realized the bay, right? The Weligama Bay.
Correct.
Where you get the Marriott and all.
Yeah.
So basically, on the other side, which is the Kaparatura side, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of pellets that have washed ashore.
Right. And how will this affect the livelihood of fishermen is my question, because given that they're already dealing with COVID-19.
Okay, so that's a super question because you have to think that we have a government in place where responsible members of the government after the Paliyakuda fishing incident went and said that COVID came from a cat who ate fish at Paliyakuda. Now, what did that do? That completely ruined the sale of fish for months, right? And then Dilip Pedarachi came on TV and he ate that fish. Now, there are a lot of criticisms about it. But do you know, Roel, that after he did that, hundreds and hundreds of fishermen met me during about a week, about 7 or 8 days. They continuously came to my office and they wanted me to thank Dilip for doing what he did, because people got some sort of faith restored in them,
These
right?
were very
Because they are not,
real fears.
yeah, because of the, when the government goes and says that you get COVID from a fish that from a cat that ate fish in a Paligoda market, people in the south don't have a high percentage of people with high literacy, so they immediately started stopping eating fish. And I remember that out of the 16 fishing stalls, 14 closed down during that time. There were hundreds and hundreds of kilos, because these people don't have freezers. They buy fish in the morning and they sell it during the day. So they had to throw hundreds and hundreds of kilos of fish because people were not eating it. So it's Dilip, and at the end of the day, Dilip did what he did because Dilip has a fishing background. He's traditionally, he came from a fisherman's family. He does fishing. He does seafood as one of his main sources of income. And there was a cross section that thought that what he did was barbaric, but there was also a cross section that said, okay, fine, this man restored the system in people buying fish.
Yes. So what's going to happen here now in Weligama? How are you going to deal with it besides eating a raw fish?
Okay.
Without using that
okay,
as
so basically, traditionally, what he did was eating sushi, what we eat at restaurants. The only thing was, he was very brash about it, and he ate it right from the top, right? Or he bit a huge chunk out. I personally think, and I suggested to him that he should have just done it with sashimi. It would have been tastier, and he could have just done it in a better way, and people would have actually appreciated what he did. And even the upper middle class would have also respected what he did.
Right.
But that being said, I have continuous discussions with the fishing community. I have continuous discussions with them, and their concerns, Roel, are very, very minor problems to solve. But they'll basically say, we don't have a light in this particular area where the ships are, the boats are being docked. Can you please get the electricity board to come and fix a lamp post? So those are very, very simple requests that they have. But this thing is now going to the fact that Kapparatota, which is the most predominant fishing area in Weligama, the fact that people have been quarantined there and people have not been given means to survive, have greatly reduced their chances of going into sea again. Because as I told you before, well, this is a daily business, no, right? They don't have millions and millions in their bank accounts. They just go by the day feel. That's how they go about it.
Right.
So the fact that the ship burning and the environmental pollution that's been spoken about, that has caused a bigger damage. But how are we going to fix it? That has to be done predominantly not through me. That has to be done through Kanchana, because Kanchana is the Minister of Fisheries. But to be very honest with you, Dilip is doing a huge service when it comes to that, because he is appointed by the SJB as our fisheries coordinator. So he is going every week or every other day. He goes to different areas and he keeps on talking to the fishermen, and he keeps on telling them the real science behind it, without just talking about fake stories. He brings the science out.
Right. So State Minister Kanchana will actually be on with us in the upcoming week. So that'll be, you should tune in, and maybe there'll be questions that can be spoken about, because it's not just the fisheries, of course. We're talking about hospitality and COVID-19. It's like not double whammy, but triple whammy, I think, for many of us.
I can't wait.
Yeah. Anyway, Rehaan, thanks so much for taking the time. Thank you for coming on and talking to us. And I hope our listeners were able to get something useful from this. Again, I need to tell our listeners, we try to keep it to a specific topic, but we do understand that people want access and want to be able to ask their representatives or local members of the local government questions. So we do accommodate other questions as well, as far as possible. But we do hope that the questions that you were able to understand something about how the South and Weligama in particular is dealing with COVID-19. As I said before, this is the third in a series that we're doing on COVID-19 and big cities or entire provinces around Sri Lanka, so that we have an idea of what's going on outside of Colombo. And thank you, Rehaan,
Royal,
for joining
one
us
second,
on
Royal.
this.
I'm really sorry to
Sorry.
interrupt you, Royal.
Yeah.
Really sorry to interrupt you, but can I just tell the people who asked me questions and who gave me suggestions, if you could, and if it's not too much to ask, could you please DM me the suggestions as well? I've already written it down, but it'll be better if you can just DM it to me as well on my Twitter inbox, or you can DM me on 0773 894 894. I'm available on WhatsApp. So please send me the suggestions so that I can forward it to the leadership within the SJB.
Right. So all of y'all who already asked Rehaan questions or had suggestions, y'all can DM him or his number. Hopefully we can tweet that out. And you can WhatsApp him. Also, anyone who had questions, who DM me or DM Rehaan, he has said that he's very, he's accessible on Twitter. He will answer your questions. Rehaan, thank you so much. I know you're very busy, but we managed to, I think I've been trying to get you for a couple of weeks.
Thank you very much, Well.
Thanks for joining us.
I was honored to be on the show, and I'm wishing you all the best. Keep on doing what you guys are doing, be the alternative media. What you guys are doing is actually priceless. And I'm wishing you all the best, Royal, and I'm looking forward to joining your spaces in the future as well.
Thanks, Rehaan, and more power to you as well. Thank you to everybody else who joined us, all our listeners, and we will see you during our next installment of Twitter Spaces. We'll let you know who will be coming on. Thanks again.
Thanks, Royal.
Bye.